Hello and welcome to another edition of Talkin' with Boss. I'm Parrish Alford. This is John Pitts over here. And we're going to talk some Ole Miss football. We're going to talk some SEC football and whatever else comes to mind across the college football landscape. We thank you for being with us today. John, Texas A&M, number 9 Texas A&M, coming to Oxford, where the Rebels have suddenly come back to earth. A little bit of a disappointment, some momentum lost after a 3-0 start, a couple of big road wins, some rankings there, and all of a sudden, I'll tell you what I've told other people, John, is I thought the Auburn game was the first game under Hugh Freeze in which Ole Miss was outperformed by a team on its level of equal caliber. You know, we saw Ole Miss really perform well at LSU, almost win in Baton Rouge last year. We saw Georgia pull away from them in the second half, Alabama in the fourth quarter, those games last year. But against Auburn, Mississippi State, Arkansas, you know, the Rebels were right there. This Auburn team really kind of, took it to them with Nick Marshall running that option in the run game. Ole Miss unable to stop that. The Rebels making some mistakes on offense that we just hadn't seen this year. What was your take on that game?
I thought that was a loss that puts the whole rest of the season in a slightly different color. It sort of colors things. The lens that you have to look through now is just a little different. And up to this point, it seems like in even-ish matchups that Ole Miss has always had an answer, and they just didn't have an answer for this. And now you kind of look at the schedule and say, hey, you got to be careful or you're going to wind up having a season that will sort of underperform what expectations might have been.
Well, and expectations, now you use that word. Hugh Freeze doesn't like that word. And, he returned to some familiar themes earlier this week talking about journey and program building and all that. And look, I know where this program was at the end of 2011. I understand the building that goes on, but I also know that it's not the end of 2011 anymore, and it was just kind of strange and unusual to see that type of performance at Auburn. And so the question becomes, is that an isolated incident or does it become a trend? The struggle of the running game has become a trend, and that's something that basically the ball is in Freeze's court now, and it's time for Ole Miss to see how it can respond to defenses that are kind of moving their ends and linebackers out and taking away that perimeter run game. John, if you're the coach and you know the Ole Miss personnel, you know what you have, well, what's your answer to that?
Well, I'm not sure there's a schematic answer to it so much as it's just a question of everybody having to win their battles at the point of attack. And it may be that there are weeks that's harder to do than others. I asked you sitting here a week or so ago, who is the running back that gets the tough yard? And, when the running back that gets the tough yard is actually a quarterback of some sort, that's not enough of an answer. And it's funny how for all the talk about tempo offense and throwing the ball all over the field, that it's still a significant issue is, can you run up the gut when you need to run up the gut? And right now, that's just not working.
Well, I'll tell you, they were fairly effective in short yardage offense against Auburn, and Freeze has gotten comfortable in Barry Brunetti as his short yardage guy. I mean, it is a quarterback. He's about 25 pounds heavier than any of the backs who are going to carry the ball for Ole Miss. So he's your bigger guy. He's a proven inside runner. He's really good. That's what he does. But he's a quarterback. Now, there are people who would like to see him line up at running back. I've had that question posed to me several times about Barry Brunetti at running back. Hugh Freeze is very comfortable right now with Barry Brunetti directing a short yardage offense. And they converted several times in short yardage situations at Auburn. But what they didn't do was get 6 yards on first down. What they didn't do was consistently run between the tackles and move the chains that way and set themselves up for better play calling opportunities on second down or to get themselves in third and manageable. I went back and counted, John, all of the third downs for Ole Miss at Auburn. They were 5 for 19 on third down. The average yardage to go on third down was almost 7.5 yards. And that's that's too much.
Right.
And that goes back to not necessarily short yardage running, but just running from tackle to tackle in general, and getting into more manageable situations after first down.
Well, your playbook is so much more interesting when you can consistently look at second and third and three. Second down and three opens up a whole series of things, especially with the read option, that you have the opportunity maybe to get people to bite on a play fake or whatever. There's just lots of things you can do. If you're consistently looking at 3rd and 7, not so much.
No, 7.5. It's been quiet, John, on the Johnny Manziel front since he sat out the first half against Rice. I'm wondering if you think that the Manziel story as a constant presence of sound bites and images has gone away or just died down until the end of the season.
Well, I'm confident there's a certain amount of image management that's gone on there. I suspect Texas A&M felt like they had to have a come to Jesus meeting with some people and say, look, we got to get the headline, we got to get this away from the headlines. But there was also no question that once the season really got started, that it would be the on-the-field thing that would fascinate. And Manziel seems to be holding up his end of the bargain in terms of keeping a lower profile.
He's doing that, and he seems to be a better pocket passer. And look, basically you're in the season, so there's not time to go out to the big event on the weekend, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, whatever the event of the day is. There's just not time for that because I think Manziel's a good teammate.
Yes.
I think he's committed to his teammates and wants to do well himself. So there's really not time for that. I think that Manziel story will come back when the question becomes, when do you declare for the draft?
Right.
When the season is over, I think we'll see more Johnny Manziel off the field. It might not be that he's partying as much as he was in the offseason. Maybe it will be. But the draft will take on a different storyline for Johnny Manziel, who has already expressed interest in getting out of College Station. I was in College Station for 5 days and was happy to get out. So, I mean, I understand
Bear Bryant
to a degree.
Bear Bryant was happy to get out. So I can't really knock the fact that people want to get out. I think the Heisman Trophy ceremony would be an excellent time for Johnny Manziel to talk about. He'll be there as a defending champion, whether he's in the finalist group or not, and I suspect he will be in the finalist group. That seems like a good weekend to clarify his intention.
I think so, but what seems good to us isn't often what seems good to the handlers.
Right.
The people who decide what the image should be and whatnot. And speaking of handlers and image, you mentioned that about Johnny Manziel, and from what I understand from those who cover Texas A&M on a regular basis, it's quite rare that he is available for interviews, and it's typically unannounced. They may rush him in there after a game, a night game on deadline when people are filing stories, some things like that. Some of that is to limit exposure and limit questions, but I think there's also a sense of they don't want to announce that Johnny Manziel will be at the regular scheduled press conference on a Tuesday and then have throngs of media who would normally not be there drive in just for that event. So,
right.
So there's a certain amount of handling going on, and that goes into where we see Manziel with the off-the-field story and how that has died down. On the field, John, he looks like a better pocket passer. We know he can run. How do you defend him?
I think, how do you defend him? Wow.
Yeah. Not a programmed answer here, man. You were ready to take an answer A.
I do think you've got to have a guy on the field who accounts for him at all times. You can call him whatever you want, but that's good old traditional football. But you also have to accept the fact that you may defend, and we've talked about this before, you may defense everything perfectly and he still makes a play.
Because you can't defend improvisation all the time.
You may have 4 guys bearing down on him, and you may have the good receiver double covered, and the good receiver goes up and gets it because he's 6 foot whatever, 6'5", and so you got to accept the fact, like Alabama did, that there are going to be some plays made. You just have to try to limit the number of the really hurtful ones, and frankly, try to keep the ball out of his hands. He can't hurt you if he's standing on the sidelines watching your offense.
Interesting matchup to consider here for Ole Miss is freshman cornerback Derek Jones, how much he will be involved. Dave Womack was very coy with that when we asked him about it on Tuesday, as he always is, as any coach is when questions start trending toward game plan and strategy. Dave said, we'll need everybody for this game. Well, yes, you will. But Derek Jones, a freshman at 6'3", is the closest Ole Miss has to physically matching up with Mike Evans, who is 6'5". Now, Jones is a guy, I don't know what his role will be. I do know that they were working him in. They've begun to mix him in more and more in practice. Didn't play against Auburn, but he got on the field. It wasn't on the field at Alabama a long time, but was there long enough to figure in with 4 tackles. So he's very athletic. He signed as a wide receiver. Hugh Freeze on signing day called him the sleeper of the class, and he's gone from wide receiver to safety and now to cornerback. He's really gone around the block. But this is a guy, when they moved him to cornerback after the Southeast Missouri game, I believe it was, earlier in the season, a few weeks ago, the word was, we like Derek Jones' athleticism, and we think he gives us a chance to compete against bigger, more physical wide receivers that we're going to see in the SEC. Well, that's what you have right here. So the question in that matchup becomes, are you willing to sacrifice the experience that Derek Jones does not have for the athleticism that you know that he has and hope that he makes the right play?
Yes, I think you got to try it. I mean, everything's a chance, but I believe you probably have to work him into your rotation at the very least, just to show Texas A&M something they might not have seen.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that this is a staff that's not scared to do something non-traditional like that and throw a freshman out there and see what it'll give you. You don't have to stick with him the whole game, but it's not going to be a staff, I think, that's going to play Charles Sawyer the entire game because he's a senior.
Right.
I don't think we're going to see that. I don't know how much we'll see Derek Jones. I do think he'll figure in to this matchup against Mike Evans. I do think, John, and you hit on this earlier about offense and execution and keeping Manziel off the field, that's going to be Ole Miss's best game plan in this game. I mean, we need to see this offense return to the level of efficiency that it showed against Vanderbilt, against Southeast Missouri when the starters were in, against Texas most of the game. We need to see the offense return to that level of efficiency, because while the defensive players really didn't like this conversation earlier in the week because they have pride and they have heart, as Sir Darius Bryant pointed out, look, this is about matching Manziel drive for drive and point for point if Ole Miss is going to pull off an upset.
Wouldn't it be funny if Ole Miss came out this weekend, huddled up, did the usual thing, worked the clock down to zero every snap?
Yeah, put Nick Parker at fullback.
Yeah, I mean, just come out and maybe wear leather helmets would be good. But you're going to have to be efficient. If you can tell me how many times Ole Miss punts, I might could tell you something about how that game's going to go.
Well, I was really hoping, John, that we could see Johnny Manziel and Marshall Henderson on the square on Friday night.
Wow.
I think you could sell tickets to that and raise money for scholarship
Please,
funds.
out there, if you see this, get a picture of it.
That's right.
Please email it to me.
Have the smartphones at the ready. if you see this and Manziel is broken free from the hotel room.
Holy cow.
Right.
If I'm Marshall Henderson, I am so hooking up with that guy if I can. But I don't know. I don't know if that town's big enough for both those guys.
Shifting gears, John, what do you make of Missouri right now? I was slow to jump on the wagon with these guys based on their early schedule. The only BCS level opponent was Indiana, which comes with an asterisk because it's Indiana. Then Indiana goes and beats up on Penn State. Missouri puts up 50 on your homeboys because everybody knows that Nashville is just a suburb of Murfreesboro. So how about Missouri? Are they a player in the East right now? Right now they are.
Right now they are, and have a tremendous opportunity this week, if I understand correctly. I mean, they got to go to Georgia, but I don't know. I wasn't making much of them, and I'm still not sure, because I think we have made the mistake of assuming that this is the new wave Vanderbilt, and this is starting to look a little bit like the old wave Vanderbilt.
Yeah, the Ole Miss win over Vanderbilt loses some luster every time Vanderbilt takes the field.
Right.
It just does. Now, everybody, nobody's playing their best on the season opener. I would not have thought that Ole Miss, coming out of that Vanderbilt game in which Austin Carter-Samuels and Jordan Matthews just torched that secondary, that Ole Miss would be second in the SEC right now in pass defense, giving up about 185 yards a game. So they've begun to settle down at cornerback. They've begun to play a lot better there, and they've really made some strides in pass defense. But Vanderbilt has kind of gone the other way. We saw them struggle at UMass, and really just came out of there with a 24-7 win, but really nothing in the way of style points there at all.
Right.
Missouri, John, last year it was all about, look, Missouri is in the SEC, but James Franklin, who is really playing well for them right now at quarterback, while he's not coaching Vanderbilt, is we have to remember that he was hurt last year in the game. He missed some games, and when he was playing, he wasn't at full strength. So, that's going to factor into what Missouri was unable to accomplish last year. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on those guys, just because people have looked at this 6-game stretch of home games for Ole Miss as a time to make up ground or really do something special with the season. They've pointed to Arkansas and Ole Miss games almost as givens, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, let me go back to Missouri for a second and just say that that's a smart and veteran coaching staff, and you expected to see them with an advanced learning curve between the first and second seasons in the league, and I believe they've done that. I said here on the podcast for sure more than once, don't look for Arkansas and Auburn to roll over and play dead this year. Those were going to be tougher games than people expected. I think the Arkansas game is just hugely important for Ole Miss. I think if for some reason you don't win that game, it just makes the rest of the season difficult. And the on paper, the matchup with Mississippi State's a pretty close matchup right this minute.
Right this minute it is. A month ago, maybe not. But things change. You're not the same team in October. You're not the same team in November. As Houston Nutt used to say, they remember November.
Right.
Okay.
Probably Ole Miss or Mississippi State's probably within the margin of error with Ole Miss right now, if I had to put it that way.
Well, people are always looking at that matchup, as the season goes on. People are wondering what that game is going to shape up like, and it will change, most likely change from here and look different by the time Thanksgiving comes along. South Carolina, John, Jadeveon Clowney, is he hurting himself with the NFL scouts? Really just kind of bizarre news coming out of Columbia. Usually a coach finds out from his training staff the status of a player, but Clowney says, I'm not going. I don't feel good. I'm hurt. I'm not going. What do you think?
He's not. He's probably hurting himself on campus or in the South Carolina community, but he's not hurting himself with NFL scouts. He'll be a workout warrior at the combine, and he'll be a top 3 pick, probably.
Well, and I think you're right, because the draft, I've said so many times here, is not about what you achieve in college. It's about what they think they can coach you to become. It's about your potential, not about your college production. I think NFL scouts have seen all they need to see on YouTube when the Michigan guy's helmet got blown up. Okay. So I really don't think Clowney is hurting himself too badly, because there are teams that will badly want to take Jadeveon Clowney. They'll want to overlook whatever quirks there are if he gives them a reason to. If he goes to the combine and performs like you say, or interviews well or whatnot, they'll be on that train, and I just don't think he's hurting himself too much.
There will be a lot of very pointed character questions that evolve in those interviews, though. I think he has to be prepared to defend himself on that basis.
Well, and sometimes interviews have not been his strong suit, as he calls out opposing quarterbacks, at media days and things like that. So maybe there's some on-the-field maturation, maybe less on-the-field maturation that needs to take place rather than off the field, and just kind of handling business in a different way there. But he is... he is a physical specimen. So we'll see if Robert Kimdichie becomes that. That comparison has been made quite often.
Okay.
Folks, that's it for this edition. Come back and join us next week.